All the nannies had left the mansion, until a black woman surprised the millionaire. The mansion in Beverly Hills was wrapped in tense silence when Dorothy Williams rang the doorbell. She carried only a worn fabric bag and the determination of someone desperately needing the job to support her college-aged daughter. Richard Mitchell opened the door himself, a rare thing for a businessman of his stature. His sunken eyes and unshaven beard betrayed sleepless nights. Before she could even introduce herself, he whispered wearily that 43 nannies had already abandoned his 7-year-old twins. 43, he repeated, shaking his head. The last one lasted only 4 hours. Dorothy noticed the man's trembling hands and sensed there was something far beyond childish tantrums in that house. "Mr. Richard, I came here to work. I have experience with difficult children," she said in the firm voice she often used to calm the little ones at the community daycare center where she worked on weekends. He led her through the entry hall, where expensive paintings contrasted with crayon marks on the marble walls. The dirty footprints on the Persian rug told stories of unsupervised mischief and chaos. "They're upstairs. I can't go up there anymore," Richard confessed, stopping at the foot of the stairs. "If you can get them to eat dinner tonight, I'll double your pay." Dorothy climbed the steps with steady strides, but as she reached the second floor, the children's screams echoed through the halls like a storm. Young voices shouted words they shouldn't know, followed by the sound of objects being thrown against walls. In the bedroom, she found the boys destroying everything within reach. Ethan threw a toy car that barely missed her head, while Mason tore pages from a storybook. Both had messy blonde hair and clothes stained with paint and food. Unlike the other nannies, Dorothy didn't scream or run. She simply sat on the floor amid the mess and began softly singing a song her grandmother had taught her as a child. "Hush, little baby, don't say a word." The boys stopped, startled. In months, no one had reacted this way. For the first time, they fell silent, watching this dark-skinned woman with a calm smile who showed no fear or anger. Richard watched everything from his office security cameras, stunned when he saw Ethan, the more aggressive of the two, approach her hesitantly. "Why didn't you leave?" the boy asked, still clutching a broken toy in his hands. "Because I didn't come here to leave," Dorothy replied, still humming. "I came to take care of you." Mason, the younger by a few minutes, sniffled and wiped away a stubborn tear. "They all leave," he murmured. Dorothy saw the old tear stains on their young faces and understood that their aggression hid a deep pain she knew well. She'd seen the same behavior in boys from the housing project where she grew up, children of mothers who worked long hours and came home too exhausted to give the affection they needed. But something was different here. These boys had everything money could buy, except what mattered most. "Are you hungry?" she asked, rising slowly. "We don't eat nanny food," Ethan declared, crossing his arms. "Good, because I don't make nanny food. I make grandma food," she replied with a smile. "My grandma always said an empty belly makes a sad heart." During dinner, she discovered the boys had refused to eat for days, surviving only on cookies and soda they sneaked from the kitchen. When she prepared a simple meatloaf with mashed potatoes and scrambled eggs, seasoned with the love she learned from her mother, they devoured it as if it were a feast. "It's good," Mason admitted timidly. "Did my mom make it like this?" asked Ethan, and for the first time his voice didn't sound aggressive. The question cut Dorothy's heart like a blade. There it was, the wound everyone was trying to ignore. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. That first night, Dorothy discovered the house held painful secrets. While searching for towels in the hallway closet, she found a slightly ajar door leading to the late wife's room. The space had remained untouched for 2 years, with clothes still hanging in the closet and a perfume bottle on the dresser, as if Sarah Mitchell might return at any moment. The maids whispered in the hallways when they thought no one was listening. Through Beatrice, the housekeeper who had worked there for 20 years, Dorothy learned the boys had gone mute for 6 months after losing their mother. When they finally spoke again, all they knew how to do was scream. "Poor little things," Beatrice sighed as she folded laundry. "They lost their mother so young, and their father shut himself up like an oyster. He doesn't talk, doesn't play, doesn't show affection. How can children grow up healthy like that? On the second night, Dorothy heard soft footsteps in the hallway. Following the sound, she found the boys climbing the stairs to the attic. Carefully, she followed and saw them crying among old boxes, clutching a photo of their mother their father had forbidden them to keep. She was pretty, Mason said, running his finger over the frame. Why did she leave? Ethan asked, his voice choked. Daddy said she had to go away, but everyone leaves and never comes back. Dorothy's chest tightened. There it was, the root of all their anger. Two children emotionally abandoned, trying to understand why every adult in their lives disappeared. The next day, Richard scolded her harshly when he learned she'd let the boys keep their mother's photo. I made it clear I don't want them talking about this, he said, his voice sharp as a razor. You're here to care for the children, not question my decisions. If you can't follow the rules, you can leave like the others. Mr. Mitchell, Dorothy replied calmly, children need to grieve their losses, not swallow their pain until it turns to anger. You're raising two boys who don't know how to handle sadness, only rage. Richard was speechless for a moment, his face red with indignation. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially by a maid. You know nothing about my family, he muttered, leaving the room. But Dorothy had touched a wound he too was trying to hide. The boys gradually began to calm under her care. She established simple but important routines: breakfast together, bedtime stories, playtime in the garden. For the first time in 2 years, children's laughter echoed through the house again. But the peace was shattered when Ethan had a violent outburst upon seeing his father hug Fiona, his personal assistant who came to handle company business at home. The boy screamed, kicked Richard's legs, and tried to bite the woman in a fit of jealousy and fear that startled everyone present. You can't date someone else, Ethan shrieked. Mommy will be sad. Dorothy had to intervene when the boy tried to hurt himself by banging his head against the wall. In that moment, she discovered he believed his mother had left because they'd been bad, a guilt he carried like an impossible weight for his 7 years. Your mother didn't leave because you did something wrong, she said, holding him in her arms as he sobbed. Sometimes people get sick and need to go to a place where the pain ends. But her love for you stays right here, she touched the boy's chest, forever. During a walk in the garden behind the mansion, Dorothy spoke with old Mr. Jenkins, the elderly gardener who had tended the property for 30 years. The man shared details that changed her understanding of the whole situation. The mistress had been sick for a long time, he told her, watering the rose bushes Sarah had loved so much. But she hid it from the boys so she wouldn't scare them. She pretended to be fine even when she could barely stand. In the end, she got worse so fast there wasn't time to say goodbye properly. Do the boys know this? Dorothy asked. No one told them. The master forbade it, said it was better this way, that they were too young to understand. But children feel everything, don't they? They've been thinking their mother abandoned them. This revelation made Dorothy search for more answers. One afternoon, while Richard was in a meeting, she explored his office for clues. She found unsent letters Sarah had written to her children during her last months, explaining her love for them and apologizing for not being able to stay longer. When she confronted Richard about the letters, he refused to hand them over. This will only hurt them more, he said, locking the drawers. It's better if they forget. Mr. Richard, with all due respect, you're mistaken. They can't forget because they don't understand. They're creating a fantasy worse than the truth. You're not a mother, you don't understand, he retorted coldly. I'm not a mother, but I was a child, and I know how much it hurts when adults lie thinking they're protecting. Tension in the house grew when Caitlin, a former nanny who had worked there for only 3 days, returned to retrieve a forgotten item. She confided in Dorothy that the boys screamed their mother's name during terrible nightmares every night. They wake up crying, calling for Sarah, Caitlin said at the mansion's gate. It's heartbreaking. I tried to comfort them, but the master said to let them cry until they tired themselves out, that it would pass with time. How do they sleep now? Dorothy asked. They still have nightmares, but not as often. You're doing something different. Dorothy knew what she was doing differently. She was treating the children's pain as something real and important, not as an inconvenience to be ignored. Determined to help the family, she organized a small tribute to their mother with the children. She helped them make drawings, write letters, and pick flowers from the garden to place in a special spot they created under Sarah's favorite cherry tree. When Richard came home from work and saw the tribute, he exploded in anger. "I forbade this kind of thing," he shouted, tearing everything apart with his own hands, trampling the drawings and ripping up the flowers. "You need to stop living in the past." The boys became aggressive again, and all the progress made in weeks seemed lost in minutes. Dorothy almost gave up when she saw their pain, but as she cleaned up the mess, she found something that changed her perspective on Richard. Hidden under papers in his office was the journal he kept sporadically. The pages revealed he blamed himself for his wife's worsening illness, believing the stress of business and his long absences had contributed to her condition. Today, Sarah collapsed in the kitchen while making the boys breakfast. The doctor said she was pushing herself too hard, that she should have been resting. But she insisted on keeping things normal so she wouldn't scare the children. How did I not see she was suffering? How can I be a good father if I couldn't even be a good husband? Dorothy understood that Richard was also lost in his own pain, trying to protect the children the same way Sarah had tried to shield them, by hiding the suffering. Beatrice, the longtime housekeeper, confirmed her suspicions during a conversation in the kitchen. "The boss can't look at the boys without seeing Sarah's face in them," she confided while preparing lunch. "They have her eyes, her smile. I think he pulls away because it hurts too much to remember." "And the boys feel it," Dorothy replied. "They think their father doesn't love them. He does love them, but he doesn't know how to show it. He never learned. His own father was the same way, distant and cold." The situation took a drastic turn when the boys overheard a phone call and discovered Richard planned to send them to a boarding school in Switzerland. "He wants to get rid of us," Ethan shouted, locked in his room with his brother. "Just like Mom did," Mason sobbed. "Everyone leaves." They threatened to run away if Dorothy left them too, like the other nannies had, screaming that all adults abandoned them. The situation was becoming unbearable. "I promise I won't leave," she said through the bedroom door, "but I need you to help me help your father too." "He doesn't want help," Ethan shot back. "He just wants us gone." Dorothy knew she needed Richard's cooperation, but he remained distant and cold with everyone. The breaking point came on a stormy night when the power went out, and she found the businessman alone in his dark office. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Richard sat in his leather chair, clutching Sarah's wedding dress, tears streaming silently down his face. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows on the walls lined with photos of the happy family they once were. "Mr. Richard," Dorothy said softly, stepping carefully into the room. He startled, trying to hide his tears and push the dress aside. "I was just—" he stammered, ashamed to be caught in such a vulnerable moment. "The whole family needs to grieve this loss together," she said, sitting in a nearby chair. "Not separately, each hiding their pain." Richard finally broke. The mask of the successful businessman fell away, revealing a man shattered by loss and fear. "I can't do it, Dorothy," he confessed, his voice choked. "Every time I look at them, I see her. Every smile, every gesture. It's like Sarah is right there reminding me how much I failed." "You didn't fail. You loved a brave woman who fought until her last breath to protect her children. But I should have noticed sooner. Should have insisted she stop pretending she was fine. Should have paid more attention, worked less, and now you're doing the same thing to the boys, pushing them away as if that will protect them from the pain." Richard fell silent for a long moment, the sound of rain against the windows filling the space between them. "I'm afraid to show weakness in front of them," he admitted at last. "If I fall apart, who will take care of them? Who will be strong?" "Strength isn't hiding your feelings, Mr. Richard. Strength is showing them that it's okay to feel pain, that it's human to cry, that love doesn't disappear just because the person is gone." That dark night, Dorothy planted the first seed of healing. They talked until the power came back on, and for the first time Richard spoke about Sarah, her quirks, her dreams, how she used to sing the boys to sleep, how she made pancakes on Sunday mornings. The next day, she convinced him to have dinner with his sons. The boys initially greeted him with hostility and silence, wary after so many months of emotional neglect. "Is Daddy leaving too?" asked Mason, playing with the food on his plate. "I'm not leaving," replied Richard, his voice softer than usual. I know I haven't been a good father lately." "You just work," said Ethan, not looking at him. "Same as before Mommy got sick." The word sick dropped like a bomb at the table. Richard froze, realizing they knew more than he'd imagined. "You knew Mommy was sick?" he asked, trying to stay calm. "We heard Beatrice talking," admitted Mason. "She said Mommy pretended to be okay so we wouldn't be sad." "Why didn't anyone tell us?" asked Ethan, finally looking at his father with hurt eyes. "We thought she left because we were bad." When Mason accidentally called out Mommy while looking at the empty chair where Sarah used to sit, Richard finally broke. He stood up, pulled both boys into a tight hug, and they cried together for the first time in 2 years. "I'm sorry," Richard repeated between sobs. "I'm sorry I didn't take better care of you. I'm sorry I left you alone with this pain." "Daddy, is Mommy coming back?" asked Mason, his voice muffled against his father's chest. "No, son, but she's still here." He touched each of their chests. "In your hearts, and I'll stay with you forever." Dorothy watched from the kitchen doorway, tears streaming down her face. That was just the first crack in the wall they'd built around their grief, but it was enough to let the light in. From then on, she organized sessions where each could talk about Sarah without judgment, creating a safe space for pain but also for good memories. Richard told them how he'd met his wife at a bookstore where she worked and recommended books to customers. The boys remembered the stories she'd made up at bath time, always with happy endings. "Mommy did different voices for each character," said Mason, smiling for the first time in ages. "And she always ended with, 'and they lived happily ever after, just like our family,'" added Ethan. Gradually, the boys' aggressive drawings began to show flowers, smiles, and even their mother's figure in the sky watching over them. They were subtle signs that emotional healing was beginning. Richard drastically cut back on business trips, prioritizing breakfast and dinner with his sons every day. He discovered he'd missed important moments. Mason had learned to tie his shoes by himself. Ethan could write the whole family's name. Both had food preferences he hadn't known about. The transformation wasn't immediate or steady. There were setbacks and hard days, moments when anger flared up again. But Dorothy's constant presence provided the stability they needed to process their emotions without getting lost in them. One morning, 3 months after her arrival, she suggested something that would have seemed impossible weeks before. "How about we plant a tree in memory of Mommy?" she proposed at breakfast. "A special place where you can come talk to her when you miss her." Richard hesitated at first, his old fear resurfacing. "I don't know if that's a good idea." "Daddy," said Ethan, surprising everyone. "Dorothy said we can remember Mommy without being sad, just by thinking of the good things. And the tree will grow strong, just like the love she had for us," Mason added. Richard looked at his sons, saw the hope in their eyes, and realized Dorothy had achieved something he'd thought impossible. She'd taught the children to turn pain into love. "Okay," he said, his voice thick. "Let's plant the tree." They chose a magnolia sapling, Sarah's favorite tree, and planted it in a special corner of the garden, where she used to read on Sunday afternoons. Richard dug the hole with his own hands, dirt-stained for the first time in years, while sharing stories about his wife that the boys had never heard before. "Your mother said she picked the magnolia for our first apartment because yellow is the color of joy," he said, placing the sapling in the earth. "She wanted our home to always be full of happiness." "And she did it," said Mason, patting dirt with his little hands. "Even when she left?" asked Ethan. "Especially after she left," Richard replied, looking at Dorothy with gratitude, "because she sent someone very special to take care of us." The neighbors at the Beverly Hills mansion, who had complained for months about the shouting and noise, began to notice the commotion had stopped. Now children's laughter echoed through the estate gardens, the sound of bikes pedaling on the circular driveway, cheerful voices calling, "Daddy, come play!" Dorothy taught the boys to cook their mother's favorite dish, mac and cheese, turning the kitchen into a place of happy memories instead of one they avoided. Richard discovered he had a knack for cooking and started making breakfast every Saturday, a tradition Sarah had given up when she fell ill. "Daddy, your pancakes are almost as good as Mommy's," said Mason, sticky with syrup. "Almost," Richard feigned offense. "Guess I'll have to practice more." When Sarah's birthday approached, Dorothy suggested something that at first seemed impossible, a celebration of life instead of a day of mourning. "I don't know," Richard hesitated. "It's always been such a hard day." "Exactly why we should," she explained. "Sarah wouldn't want you to be sad on the day she came into the world, would she?" The boys loved the idea, making colorful cards and handmade decorations. Richard watched the preparations with a heavy heart, but little by little, he joined in. During the quiet gathering in the garden, each shared a favorite memory of Sarah. Richard told of their first date, when she spilled coffee on his shirt and insisted on paying for dry cleaning. The boys remembered how she danced around the house while cleaning, always blasting country music at full volume. "She said loud music scares away sadness," Mason recalled. "And it worked," Ethan added. "The house was always happy when she danced." Richard smiled genuinely for the first time in 2 years, picturing Sarah not as a painful loss, but as a joy that had been part of their lives. Beatrice, watching from a distance, said tearfully to the other staff, "The house finally has its soul back after so much darkness. It's like the mistress sent an angel to look after her family." Months passed, and at a parent-teacher meeting, the teachers praised the boys' dramatic change in behavior. Once aggressive and withdrawn, they had become kind and engaged, always eager to help classmates. "They talk about their mother so fondly now," Ethan's teacher said. "Before, any mention of family made them angry. Now they speak of her with love and longing, but no bitterness." Richard proudly introduced Dorothy as the woman who saved our family, without a trace of the arrogance he once showed towards staff. He treated her with the respect owed to someone who had changed his life. "Before she came, I was raising 2 angry little boys," he confided to a fellow businessman facing similar struggles. "She taught me that love means facing pain together, not hiding from it." Dorothy Williams finally found the mother's letters being read to the boys by their father, who had learned that transparency, even about painful matters, was better than well-intentioned lies. "My little princes," one of the letters said, "by the time you read this, I'll already be watching over you from a different place, but I want you to know that every laugh of yours, every drawing you make, every new word you learn, reaches me like a gift. Be kind to your daddy. He'll need lots of love to learn how to take care of you on his own. And remember, the love I feel for you is bigger than any distance." The house that used to go through Nannies every week now welcomed the boys' friends to play. Dorothy organized birthday parties, helped with homework, and mediated childish fights with the patience of someone who understood that every behavior had a reason. The garden became a place of life again. Richard learned to play soccer with his sons, discovered Mason had a talent for drawing, and that Ethan loved adventure stories. Small discoveries a present father should have made years earlier. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. One Saturday afternoon, while playing hide-and-seek in the garden, Mason got hurt after tripping over a root. Instead of crying alone like he used to, he ran to Dorothy and then to his father, letting them both tend to the small cut on his knee. "It hurts," he said, but without the panic he once had. "Hurts heal," Dorothy replied, cleaning the wound. "Just like sadness. It hurts at first, but then it gets better." "Has Mommy's sadness gotten better?" Ethan asked, pausing his play to watch. "It's gotten much better," Richard said, surprised by his own answer. "I still miss her every day, but it doesn't hurt like before." "Why doesn't it hurt anymore, Daddy?" "Because I've learned I can love Mommy and be happy with you all at the same time. Before, I thought being happy without her was wrong, like it was a betrayal." Dorothy smiled. seeing he had finally understood the most important lesson. Love doesn't shrink when someone leaves. It just changes shape. On the day she completed a year working at the mansion, the boys surprised her with a drawing where she stood beside the family, all holding hands under the tree they had planted, which on paper was tall and full of yellow flowers. "You're part of our family now," Mason said, handing her the drawing. "Forever," Ethan added. Richard, moved by the scene, made an offer that surprised everyone. "Dorothy, I'd like to offer you a partnership in an organization I'm starting to help grieving families," he said, handing her a folder of documents. "So you have a unique gift for healing broken hearts." Dorothy flipped through the papers, saw the proposed terms, the responsibilities, the office that would be hers. It was an opportunity that would completely change her financial life, allow her to buy a home for her daughter, fulfill dreams that had seemed impossible. But she looked at the boys, saw the magnolia tree growing strong in the garden, smelled the pancakes coming from the kitchen where Richard was making Saturday breakfast, and realized she already had everything that mattered. "Thank you for the offer, Mr. Richard, but my place is here," she replied gently. "There's still so much love to nurture and heal in this house. But it would be a great opportunity for you. The greatest opportunity of my life was walking through that door a year ago and finding a family that needed to learn to love again. Money can buy many things, but it can't buy the feeling of waking up every day knowing you make a difference in someone's life." Richard understood that he hadn't just found a nanny, but someone who looked beyond the paycheck, who genuinely cared about his family's well-being. "So you'll stay with us?" asked Mason, his eyes shining with hope. "Forever," she promised, hugging both boys. 2 years had passed since Dorothy arrived at the mansion. The transformation was visible in every corner of the house. The walls that once displayed only crayon marks now showed framed drawings, photos of the smiling family, little art projects they worked on together during weekends. Richard's office, which had once been a refuge for grief, now welcomed the boys to help with small tasks, teaching them responsibility through play. They learned to organize papers, answer the phone politely, even prepare coffee for visitors. "Daddy, when I grow up, I want to work with you," Ethan said one afternoon. "And I want to be like Dorothy, taking care of kids," declared Mason. Richard looked at his sons and saw they'd become normal children, with age-appropriate dreams, free from the anger that once consumed them. Dorothy had achieved what all the expensive psychologists couldn't. She'd given them back their childhood. The family adopted new traditions that honored Sarah without turning her memory into a source of pain. Every Sunday, they planted a different flower in the garden, each representing a quality they remembered about her. Daisies for her simplicity, roses for her love, sunflowers for her contagious joy. "Mom would love our garden," said Mason, carefully watering the seedlings. "She does," corrected Richard. "From where she is, she can see everything we do with love." Dorothy watched these interactions with a warmed heart. She'd witnessed a family rebuild from scratch, learning that healthy grief doesn't mean forgetting, but transforming longing into gratitude for moments shared. One spring morning, while preparing breakfast together, a routine that now included the boys' active participation, Richard made a realization that surprised even himself. "You know, Dorothy, I think I'm a better father now than when Sarah was alive." "Why, Daddy?" asked Ethan, carefully scrambling eggs in the pan. "Because I learned that being present isn't just being in the same house. It's talking with you, playing, knowing what you're feeling. Before, I thought working to give you everything you needed was enough. And now," prompted Mason, "now I know what you need most is me, my time, my attention, my affection." Dorothy felt her work there was complete, not in the sense of leaving, but in having fulfilled the mission she'd unconsciously taken on when she decided to stay that first night, healing a family shattered by unprocessed grief. The house that was once a mausoleum of sadness now pulsed with life. Music played on weekends, friends visited regularly, future plans were openly discussed. The boys talked about school, classmates, the small problems and joys of daily life. "Dorothy," Richard said one of those happy afternoons, "I'll never be able to thank you enough for what you've done for us. Mr. Richard, I'm the one who's grateful. You taught me that family isn't just blood. It's who chooses to stay when things get hard. Did you always know how to handle children like this? No, she answered, smiling, but I knew what it was like to be a sad child. And I knew every sad child just needs someone who looks beyond the anger, who sees the hidden pain underneath. In the final scene of this story of transformation and healing, the family gathered in the garden on a golden autumn afternoon. The magnolia tree they had planted was now tall and strong, its roots firm in the earth, its branches reaching for the sky. Richard watered the plants while the boys played nearby, their laughter echoing through the garden Sarah loved so much. Dorothy hummed softly the same song that had once calmed two boys lost in their own pain years ago. "Hush, little baby. Don't say a word." "Dorothy," called Mason, running up to her, "can you tell us that story about Grandma you told yesterday?" "Which story, sweetheart?" "The one where you said new life can grow from shared grief." Dorothy looked around, saw Richard smiling as he tended to the plants, heard the laughter of children who had once been silenced by sorrow, felt the gentle breeze rustling the leaves of the tree that stood as a symbol of everlasting love. "I don't need to tell the story," she said, hugging both boys. "You're living it." And so in a mansion that had once sent nannies out the front door, a simple woman with a big heart had achieved what 43 others could not just caring for 2 children, but healing an entire family, proving that sometimes the greatest wealth you can offer someone doesn't come from vaults full of money, but from a heart full of love and patience, enough to look beyond the surface and reach the deepest wounds of the human soul. The end of the story. So, what did you think of this touching story? Dorothy truly managed to turn an impossible situation into something beautiful, didn't she? Now tell me, do you believe love and patience can heal any wound? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more heartwarming stories.